Raphael had always dreamed of singing on a big stage, but nothing in his life prepared him for the bright lights of America's Got Talent. When he stepped out holding the microphone with both hands, it almost looked like he was protecting it from slipping away. His simple shirt, nervous smile, and soft Filipino accent made the audience think he was just another shy kid with a small dream. Even Simon tilted his head, studying him like a puzzle. Raphael introduced himself quietly, and the crowd didn't expect much, until the music for "Can't Help Falling in Love" began to play. The first note he released floated out warm, deep, and full of that unmistakable Elvis Presley soul. A ripple went through the arena. People sat up straight. Shock seeped from row to row like electricity spreading through cables. Simon's eyebrows rose, Howie's jaw literally dropped, and Heidi covered her heart. Raphael changed in front of them. His shoulders relaxed, his breathing synced with the music, and something confident and powerful awakened inside him. His voice had that classic Elvis richness but with a tender Filipino warmth that made every word feel personal. He didn't move like a dancer, he moved like someone who felt every beat in his bones. The more he sang, the more the audience realized this wasn't a gimmick. This wasn't copying. This was a kid singing from the deepest part of his soul. When he reached the ending note, holding it longer than anyone thought he could, the crowd exploded into cheers. People stood, clapping, screaming, even wiping tears. Raphael blinked in disbelief as if he didn't understand why thousands of people were cheering for him. Simon leaned back, smiling slowly, and said, "That didn't just surprise me, it floored me." Raphael lowered his head shyly, overwhelmed, while the world watched a new star quietly being born. After that performance went viral, Raphael returned for the next round with more confidence but also a heavy pressure that wrapped around him like a tight jacket. Backstage, he kept pacing as his mother whispered prayers in Filipino, her hands warm on his shoulders. The judges were excited to see him again. Simon especially looked curious, trying to figure out whether the first performance was a one-time miracle or the sign of something bigger. The moment the background screen behind him lit up with the intro to Jailhouse Rock, the energy in the room flipped. Raphael stepped into the spotlight, and even the way he held the microphone had changed. He looked less afraid, more ready. When he launched into the first line, his voice hit sharp and confident, carrying that playful Elvis swagger that made the audience cheer instantly. This time he brought fun, movement, and rhythm that nobody expected from the shy boy we first met. His feet tapped, his hips shifted naturally with the beat, and his smile grew wider with each cheer he received. The judges exchanged looks of disbelief. Heidi leaned forward laughing because the transformation was unreal. Sophia nudged Howie, telling him, "He's a whole different kid." But the one Raphael wanted to impress was Simon, and Simon watched him with intense focus, analyzing every note and every breath. The song built, and Raphael added a unique Filipino-style vocal flip at the end of one phrase, giving the classic rock hit a modern twist that sent the audience roaring. It wasn't imitation, it was innovation. When the music stopped, the applause was instant and wild. Raphael breathed hard, smiling like he had just discovered a new version of himself. Simon leaned toward his mic and said, "You didn't copy Elvis. You honored him. And you brought you into it." Those words sank into Raphael's heart like a gift. For the first time, he felt like not just a performer, but an artist finding his own identity. That night, America didn't just see a Filipino teen with an Elvis voice, they saw a rising star shaping his own future. When Raphael walked onto the stage for his third performance, everything felt bigger. Bigger lights, bigger pressure, bigger expectations. He had never performed with a full live orchestra before, and the sight of so many musicians tuning their instruments made his heartbeat jump in his chest. Backstage, he had whispered a short prayer, thinking about his dad who had been working overseas for years, missing birthdays, school events, and even Raphael's first big audition. The producers dimmed the lights, released a soft layer of fog across the floor, and the golden stage lights made Raphael look like he had stepped into a classic Hollywood dream. He chose, "Love Me Tender," not because it was easy, but because it meant something to him. It reminded him of his family, of love stretched across oceans, of memories that held him together during lonely nights. The orchestra began gently, and Raphael closed his eyes before letting the first note escape. His voice didn't sound like a teenager anymore, it sounded like an old soul telling a story. Every lyric carried emotion, and the little tremble in his voice wasn't nervousness, it was honesty. The crowd fell silent, completely still, as if the room itself didn't want to break the fragile beauty of his performance. Cameras backstage showed his mother wiping tears, whispering, "That's my son," like she couldn't believe the transformation happening in front of millions of people. As Raphael reached the middle of the song, his voice deepened, warm and soothing. He wasn't copying Elvis, he was channeling the emotion that made Elvis legendary. He wrapped his own experiences into every note, and the audience felt it all, the longing, the love, the hope. When he reached the final soft, "I love you," the silence broke into an unforgettable eruption of applause. For 2 full seconds, no one moved. The judges stared at him as if they had witnessed something rare. Sophia placed her hand over her heart and said she felt the emotion right through her chest. Simon leaned forward and said Raphael sang like someone, with an old soul trapped in a young body. That night, America realized this boy had something deeper than talent. He had heart. When the 4th episode arrived, Raphael knew the competition was getting tougher, and he needed to do something bold. Everyone expected him to pull out another classic upbeat Elvis performance for Blue Suede Shoes, but Raphael didn't want to be predictable. He wanted to show the world he could take something famous and reshape it into something original. So he chose a slow, emotional acoustic version of the song, something completely unexpected. The stage turned dark blue, one spotlight shining down on him like a lonely moonbeam, and the quiet strum of the guitar immediately caught the audience off guard. Raphael opened with a soft, almost fragile tone that made people lean forward. It was haunting, delicate, and full of emotion. The song everyone knew as fun and energetic suddenly felt like a heartbreak story. Every pause, every breath, every quiet note held a weight that wrapped around the room. The crowd didn't move. Even the judges were frozen in fascination. Halfway through the performance, Raphael's voice grew stronger, deeper, building into a powerful emotional climax that felt like thunder breaking through a storm. He closed his eyes, lifted his chin slightly, and delivered the final chorus in a way that had never been heard before. When the last note hung in the air, the audience exploded. Not just in applause, but in shock. People stood immediately, shouting his name, cheering so loudly he had to step back. Simon looked stunned, eyes wider than ever, and finally said the word Raphael secretly hoped to hear: genius. He explained that only a true artist could take a fun Elvis song and transform it into something so meaningful and cinematic. Raphael smiled shyly, but inside, he felt something new: confidence. The boy who once shook on stage now stood strong, believing, for the first time, that he truly belonged on the world's biggest platform. By the time Raphael reached the semifinals, he wasn't just a contestant anymore. He was a fan favorite, a surprise sensation, a Filipino teen who carried an Elvis soul with a modern heartbeat. But with all that love came pressure he had never felt before. Backstage, he tried to calm himself, tapping his fingers on his leg the way he always did when he was nervous. The producers handed him the mic, and it felt heavier than usual. This was the night that could decide everything, the night he had to prove he could be more than a viral moment. He had chosen Suspicious Minds, a song full of emotional punch and explosive moments, knowing it could either lift him into the finals or break him under its intensity. When he stepped out, the lights flared bright red and gold, and the crowd erupted, shouting his name. He laughed nervously for a second, but when the music hit, he locked into focus. The first line came out deeper and richer than anything he'd sung before. His voice carried a new maturity, full of control and fire. The orchestra behind him swelled, the drums pulsed like a heartbeat, and Raphael moved with confidence he didn't even know he had. It wasn't Elvis he was channeling, it was everything he had worked for. He paced the stage with purpose, raising the energy with every line. When he reached the middle of the song, he belted out high notes that shocked even the judges. Sophia pushed her chair back, eyes wide. Heidi covered her mouth. How he pointed at Raphael like he couldn't believe a teenager could carry that much power. But the moment that sealed the performance was the final long note. Raphael held it, pushed it, grew it into something massive, something raw, something unforgettable. Simon slapped the table with excitement, grinning like he had just witnessed a historic moment. When the song finally ended, the audience jumped to their feet before the lights even cut. Raphael stepped back, breathing hard, overwhelmed by the cheers. Simon leaned into his mic and said, "You're not just an Elvis voice. You're a world-class performer." Raphael's hands shook as he covered his face, trying not to cry. That night, he didn't just earn a spot in the finals, he earned respect, pride, and the realization that he might truly have a future on the world stage. The finale was something else entirely. Everything about it felt heavier, more emotional, like the ending of a long journey. Raphael stood backstage holding the mic with both hands, whispering to himself that no matter what happened, he had already achieved more than he ever dreamed. He chose, "If I Can Dream," Elvis' most powerful anthem, because it wasn't just a song, it was a message that reflected his own life. A boy from a small town in the Philippines dreaming of standing on a stage this big, singing to millions, hoping for a future brighter than anything he had known. When he stepped onto the stage, the lights were dim, and the giant screens behind him showed swirling white and golden patterns, like a dream forming from smoke. The first note he sang carried a trembling honesty that instantly pulled the audience in. As the song grew, so did his confidence. His voice reached higher, fuller, stronger than ever before. Every line came from somewhere deep inside him, a place full of hope, fear, faith, and determination. The judges watched silently, completely captivated. Simon had his hands folded, staring at Raphael with a proud, almost emotional expression. When Raphael reached the final chorus, he opened his arms wide and delivered the biggest note of his life. The stage burst into white light, and the audience reacted like a wave crashing forward, shouting, cheering, and crying all at once. When the music ended, the entire arena shot to their feet, giving him the longest standing ovation of the season. Simon leaned into his mic and said the words Raphael would never forget, "You came here as a kid with a voice. You're leaving as an icon." Raphael felt tears spill down his cheeks as the crowd chanted his name. In that moment, he realized that no matter what the results said, he had already won something bigger. He had won hearts around the world.